Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of What's Your Mess? Mental, Emotional, Social Status of Life. I am your host, Tracy D. Armstrong, and today we have another amazing guest here to share their experiences that have shaped their lives. And remember, today's podcast is not just about a story, it's about the triumphs and the resilience that this guest has overcome to become what they are today. So, our special guest today, go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone.
Hi, Tracy, and hello to everybody who's listening on your podcast today, all of your listeners. My name is Kay McCready. So I am an emotional resilience coach, a trauma practitioner, a speaker, and a 9D breathwork facilitator.
Wow, awesome, awesome. And so that's what you are now, and that's
Mm,
what you're doing now. But
yep.
let's tell everyone a little bit about your MESS, your mess that you have gone through in life.
Yeah. So my mess, well, I was a police officer for 28 years. And I only retired 2 years ago when I was 55. But during that time, I've worked and experienced lots of trauma, other people's trauma, but also my own trauma as well. So when I'd been in the police force for 4 years, my 4-year-old son died of cancer. So that's my mess, because that mess then sent me on a road of self-destruction, a road of depression, a road of trying to end my own life. And that went on for 10 years before I eventually started to, learn how to come out of the other side of that. So it was a very big mess.
Wow, wow. And you just said so you had several things in there. Like you were a police officer for 28 years.
Yeah.
Wow. That was like the first thing that was like, wow. But the fact that you lost your child at 4 years old, can you tell everyone a little bit of how did that affect you mentally?
Yeah. Um, when my son was diagnosed with, he was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, and we spent 6 months in hospital with him, believing that he would come out of hospital with, some sort of plan for recovery. But unfortunately, he didn't. And, I came home from hospital without my child. So I went back to the house where all of his toys were, all of his clothes were, and everything. And because then, sort of, mentally and emotionally, I didn't really know how to deal with that, because I'd spent my whole life helping other people. I'd spent my whole life putting everybody else first. I was very good at fixing everybody else's problems while squashing my own down, because that's what I'd always done. I believed that being resilient was just getting back up and fighting, getting knocked down, getting back up and fighting, getting knocked down, getting back up all of the time. And that's what I grew up to believe. I was quite a rough, tough child. I used to hold my own when I was at school and in my teenage years. So I was quite resilient, or so I thought. But obviously, this was something completely different, because I didn't want to face that pain. I didn't want to face the pain that I was confronted with. So um, the only thing that I knew how to do was to go back to work, which is what I did. And I went back to work 2 weeks after my son died. And, I went back to trying to fix everybody else's world. And I thought that that's what resilience was. I thought resilience was just getting back up and going back to work and getting on with it, because what choice did I have? I didn't have any other choice. There was nothing else that I could do. I had that old saying in my head all the time of big girls don't cry. That's what I was told growing up. Big girls don't cry. And I was a big girl, so I didn't want to cry. You know, I was very good when I went to deal with other people's trauma. I was very good at detaching from their emotion, and that was a form of association, which I didn't know then, but obviously I do now. But I was very good at that, and it served me well in, at work, because I was able to do my job very, very well without being emotionally attached. But when it came to my own emotions, I just didn't know how to process them. I didn't know how to deal with them. I didn't have any strategies in place. I just had this pain inside that I didn't know what to do with. And when I was at work, I became, when I went back after 2 weeks, and I became quite angry with other people, because bearing in mind, I was going to jobs where children were being abused, children were being neglected, and I had lost my child. So that was a massive challenge for me and a massive struggle. I remember sitting across the desk interviewing a sex offender of children, and I had to sit there and remain professional. And I did, but it was the most difficult, challenging time ever, because really, I wanted to get hold of him. It's like, and then I started blaming myself. Sort of the guilt took over, and I lost my faith because I blamed God. If there is a God, what have I ever done that is so wrong for this to happen to me? All I've ever done is look after everybody else, put my life on the line for other people on a daily basis, and my son's been taken. And yet there are people out there who are not looking after their children. Why was it me? So I lost my faith. Then I became quite sort of angry with other people, like I say, who weren't looking after the children. And I ended up going on sick, because there was one incident in particular where I went to a domestic violence incident, and the lady in the house, she'd lost her son. Now, I don't know how old her son was, if he was a child or an adult, but I remember her looking at me in the eyes and saying that she wanted to die. And she was saying, "You don't know how I feel. I want to be with my son." And in that moment, I just wanted to shout at her, like, "I do know what you feel like." But I didn't, because that wasn't professional. But that was the point when I went back to the office, and then I just broke, and I went on the sick for a long, long time after that.
Wow. And I can't imagine. And like I'm listening to your story, and I'm thinking about, like you're saying, you're going to work, you're working with other people who aren't appreciating the fact that they still have their child, and that are, doing these things inappropriate with these children. And it's kind of like, how dare you, and I can understand the anger also, the anger with people. And then you're having to control it and keep it suppressed, because you can't just lash out. Because I hear you saying, it's not professional. I can't do that because that's not professional. So socially, because that was mentally, that was emotionally. Now you went back to work after 2 weeks, which is pretty quick, and you had these other challenges. Socially, how did you still handle, like, being around others, friendships, family? How did all of that transpire?
Yeah, it was very difficult, because I spent most of my time at work until I went on the sick. And then really the only times I went out, I went to the supermarket sometimes, and I remember it being Christmas time and going to the checkout, and the checkout lady would say, "Oh, have you got any children? What you doing for Christmas?" And then I would feel guilty, because if I said I don't have any children, then I was denying my own child. But if I said, "Yes, I have, but my son's died," she wouldn't want to hear that. So I would just avoid going. I had a few conversations like that, and then I just avoided going shopping, because I knew those sorts of conversations would come about, just because that's what people talk about in general. So I avoided that. It was really difficult for my family because obviously they lost their grandson as well. So I knew that they were upset, and they were emotional and in pain and hurting. So that distanced us a little bit because, you know, I didn't have the capacity to look after anybody else then. I'd looked after other people all my life, but I didn't have the capacity anymore because I was unable to look after myself. Then I spent a lot of time, when I wasn't at work, I spent a lot of time in bed, under the duvet, drinking alcohol, taking sleeping tablets like they were going out of fashion. And I just wanted the thoughts in my head, what I called involuntary thoughts. I didn't want them to be there. I just wanted silence. I didn't want to be thinking all the time. I wanted silence. And I didn't know any other way to get the silence, excuse me, but to keep taking sleeping tablets and keep drinking alcohol and not eating. And I ended up trying to take my own life. And, you know, that meant that I didn't go out. I didn't have a social circle anymore. I was self-sabotaging, really. I was, you know, blaming myself and trying to work out what I had ever done that was so bad in life for this to happen to me. That was the mindset I was in right then, that I had to have done something. You know, was it the flowers that I stole from my mum on the way to school up somebody's garden? You know, was it the boy that I hit when I was at school? What was it? You know, why was I being punished like this? What had I done? And that was the mindset I was in. So socially, I didn't have a social life. I didn't do anything. I just stayed under the duvet for a long time, just beating myself up.
And that's kind of what I was thinking you were probably gonna say, because I'm thinking if I was in that position, that's probably what I would do too. Just want to be in solitude and just not want to be around people and things like that. So I'm not even going to ask that next question as far as how did it affect your status of life, because it's obvious your status of life was truly, impacted by this. Now, you said a lot, which is awesome because I can see the entire story. I want to ask you this because I know that there's some listeners out there, someone in the audience is going through this same thing, either losing someone, and especially a child, but the grief and the things that you're saying, losing their faith because they're asking, what did I do? Why is it that this was taken from me? You were, is this karma? What did I do to, deserve this? How did you, I would say, clean up or come out of this mess that you were going through?
Yeah, it was a long journey. It was a very long journey, and obviously that's why I do what I do now. But back then I didn't know any of the things that I do now. So one of the very first things that I did was, well, I ended up in hospital having tried to end my own life. And it was at that point that I woke up 3 days later having tried to end my own life. So it was, I nearly wasn't here, but I am, and I'm here to tell the story. But it was in those moments where I made a decision that I had to take responsibility, because I was looking for somebody else to fix me. I was looking for the organisation, the police force that I worked for. I was looking for them to help me. I was looking for the doctors to fix me. I was looking for somebody else outside of me to fix me, to make me better, to take my pain away, to help me. And that help was never going to be there. There was no help. It was up to me. So the first thing I did was actually take responsibility and take ownership for my own mental health, my own well-being. And really for me, that started with cleaning up my diet, because I wasn't eating, and then I was just drinking alcohol, or eating every now and then when I felt like it. And I knew that if I didn't if I wasn't eating properly and I wasn't fueling my body and looking after my body, how was I then going to perform in any way, shape, or form? I knew that if I ate well, I would feel better. If I ate well, I would sleep better. If I ate well, my gut would be better, because your gut's connected to your brain, all of these things. So that was one of the first things I did, and I cleaned up my diet and I started exercising again, because all of my life I've been into sports, some sort of sports. When I was at school, I ran for the country. I used to fight competition in Thai boxing. Like, I've always done something, but then I wasn't doing anything. So then I cleaned up my diet and I started exercising. And I got into a pattern of doing those on a regular basis, because I knew that made me feel good. When I was moving my body, when I was eating and nourishing and caring for my body, that made me feel good. And when I felt good, that put me in the mindset where I could start doing other things. Because if we're not fueling our body, we're never going to be able to do that. And then the next thing that I did was I started listening to Les Brown every morning. It was like Les Brown was my savior. That's how it felt in those moments. And I don't know how I ever heard of him the first time. I don't know if it was on a podcast or whatever, but I heard it. And I was like, oh my goodness, this man is incredible. And I remember saying back then, and this must have been 13 years ago, and I remember saying, one day, I would love to stand on a stage and speak like him and just inspire somebody else, that actually it doesn't matter what we've been through, we can still come out the other side, and to actually tell his story and be funny with it, and just have his own personality, and prove that no matter what challenges we face in life, there's always a way. So that was the third thing that I do. So I did my diet, did my exercise, and then started listening to Les Brown every day. And then from then I just gradually took small steps, and it was then I went for some energy healing. Then I looked at becoming qualified. So I became, because that was such an incredible thing that I went through. I had some Reiki. So that was amazing. I was like, wow, this is so good. I feel amazing. So then I became qualified in that. All of the different modalities that I've tried, I've then gone on to become qualified in. So I do EFT tapping. I'm a crystal therapist. I do so many different things because they helped me in those moments, So, and then it just got more and more and more, and I just did more and more things all of the time. And the other thing that was really important for me is to dance. Because when I was little, I used to dance all of the time. And I was in a dance group, and I'd stopped dancing, I'd stopped listening to music, I'd stopped doing everything. So I started dancing again, and just moving your body, because again, somatically, it's really good. We're in rhythm, which is, how we regulate our body. So again, just dancing a lot, listening to music, and just learning how to love me. Because I think I'd never actually loved me, ever. And I'd always looked to, again, something outside of myself to love me, to give me the love. But it was only, and I suppose all of that love was conditional, and the love of my son was conditional, and that was taken away. And all of the love that we get that's conditional can always be taken away, and that was one of the biggest lessons. So I learned to love myself by doing things for me, like eating healthily and exercising and dancing and listening to music and all of those things that make me feel good. And that's how I love myself. And that just got progressively better and better and better.
Right. That's what I was thinking. I was going to say, and I'm sure that, it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't. I really want to go and ask this, because you said that the energy healing really, really helped you. Could you explain to everyone kind of what energy healing is? What does that look like?
Yeah, the very first time that I had Reiki energy healing, it was so bizarre because the lady that I went to, at the end of it, she spoke to me and she said to me, "Do you mind if I say something to you? I feel like I really need to say something." I was like, "No, that's fine." She said to me, and bearing in mind she didn't know anything about me at all, and she said to me, when I was doing the energy healing, I got the vision of a blonde-haired boy in a blue t-shirt and a pair of yellow shorts. Does that mean anything to you? And I had that exact picture of my son. So for me, I was, how did she know that? How can that happen? So for me, I was so blown away by it that I trained to become an energy healer. And then from that, which was the most impactful thing that I've ever done, is breath work. The most impactful thing at all, out of Reiki, crystals, everything. For me, the breath work has been the most impactful tool ever in my whole life. And when I was not very well and people said to me, "You should try meditation." And I tried meditation, and there was no way that this was going to get silenced. The
Mhm,
things that were going on in my head, there was no way, watch the clouds go by, and then there's another 1,000 thoughts come in.
yes.
Focus on the clouds. It just didn't work for me. But breath work has been, it's just had a profound impact on my life. It's the only time that I can switch off the thoughts in my head and I can go to this most amazing place and just have nothing, just have this bliss, this incredibleness of just this spaciousness that feels incredible. And I do breath work every single day now, every day.
Breath work. And that's good because I know that there's some people that they struggle with turning off those thoughts.
Mhm.
And people do say, well, meditate, like you're saying. And some people, when they try to meditate, it's the brain's still throwing thoughts left and right. So breath work, okay, and energy healing.
Yeah, I
Those
mean,
are
the breath work for me. I actually do 9D breath work, which is another, like, I'm a 9D facilitator, so that's another type of breath work. One of the things that I've learned is that when I was going through all of the trauma of my son's death and lots of other trauma I've been throughout my life, our body keeps the score of that. Our nervous system gets dysregulated and we hold that in our body, it stores in our body. So through the 9D breath work that I do, the very first time I did a session of 9D breath work, I was in this place where my body was, I can only describe it as being out of control, where my whole body was shaking completely, like really, really shaking from head to foot for about 50 minutes. My jaw was shaking, I was crying, I just had this amazing, I know it sounds horrific, but it was horrific, amazing, but really, really powerful experience where I just released so much of that trauma that I thought I'd actually healed it already because of all the work I'd done.
Mhm.
But actually, it just goes to prove that our body keeps the score. So for me, doing any form of breath work where you're having that somatic release, which is obviously all the shaking and everything, everybody should have it. It's incredible. It is absolutely incredible. But if you can't do the 9D, just do normal breath work. There are so many breath work, people out there. everybody knows probably Wim Hof, the Iceman. He's a very popular one. I've done that. I do cold water therapy. I have an ice barrel in my yard, which I go in on a daily basis. So it's all about finding ways to regulate your nervous system and to release that emotion that is trapped inside us. So freeing.
Yes, finding a way to release that emotion that is trapped inside of us. Now, with that, do you have any ways that people can connect with you or any information that, because I know you said that you got qualified to be able to do this. So, how can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, people can get in touch with me either on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. I'm on all of those platforms under Kay McCready Coaching. And I do have on all of those, I've got a Linktree account. I've got lots of freebies on there. I've got a trauma recognition guide. I've got a free ebook, Healing After Trauma. I've got lots of different freebies on there. So if anybody wants to connect with me, you know, by all means, go on there, download anything that you want that's free. Or if you want to actually have a conversation with me to see if there's any way in which I can help you, then please just reach out to me on any of those platforms and we can book a chat.
Awesome. And I will have all of your links and your websites and things like that available, your link tree available for everyone at the end of the video. And before we wrap up, are there any last words of encouragement to the audience that you would like to leave with them?
Yeah, absolutely. If you are somebody who is struggling, whether it be through grief or through something that's happened in your life, whether it be trauma or just a huge challenge, look at me, and understand that I have been through one of probably the worst things that you could ever imagine in your life. And I never believed that there would be a day that I would come out the other side of this. But through taking responsibility for ourselves, for our own health, for our own well-being, through our own mental health, by doing things for you because you're worth it, because you deserve to be happy, because you deserve to feel good, that if I can do it, you can do it. Anybody can do it. And I know it's difficult. I understand. I completely understand. I feel you. We're never taught how to express our emotions in a way that's safe, in a way where our body feels safe, where we feel good. And most of us have never been taught how to do that. If that is you, please just look at me and let me be the light for you, that there is a way. There is always a way. Sometimes you just need a guide. Sometimes you just need a helping hand. Sometimes you just need somebody who's going to support you, who might have experienced something similar, who can give you the tips, the techniques, the strategies, and the support that you need to feel safe and to know that you can absolutely get through this no matter what.
Yes, thank you so much for that. And yes, look at her. Look at you. Like, as you were telling your story, I was over here trying not to cry. I'm like, okay, Tracy, keep it together. You don't want to mess up your makeup, because I'm like, this is such a touching story. But for anyone listening, look at her. She made it through. She overcame. She came out. She had to take responsibility and do those things to start loving herself in order to be a better person for herself and for everyone else that was around her. Again, I want to thank you so much for your time, for your story, and for letting the listeners and the audience know that they can come through it too, and they can turn their mess into a message.
Yeah.
And as we wrap up another episode of What's Your Mess, I want to leave everyone with this powerful quote to carry with them. If you want to be sad, keep thinking about the past. If you want to be anxious or worried, keep thinking about the future. But if you want to be happy, focus on the present day and be grateful for what you have. Again, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for tuning in to What's Your Mess. I'm your host, Tracy D. Armstrong, and thank you to our special guest. I appreciate you for coming on. Have a
Thank
good one,
you.
y'all.